What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Facade. I'm your host, Gavin J. Gallagher, and on this podcast, I explore the mental and emotional game often playing out subconsciously both in your mind and the mind of everyone else in the real estate or property investment market. The key to success in this game is to master your mindset and behavior, to take control of your thoughts, your emotions, and, most importantly, your ego. Welcome to the show. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode. And this week I'm speaking with a business coach who works with real estate agents in the UK. And what's interesting about this conversation is just some of the mindset and belief systems that we have, the self-limiting beliefs, the stuff that holds us back. Now, whether you're an investor or whether you're a budding investor, you're thinking about investing, or whether you're an actual real estate agent, there's plenty of information here. The only thing I'll say is, unfortunately, I ended up using my earpods, my Apple AirPods, for this conversation. I was caught in a busy day and didn't have the proper mics and stuff, so the audio quality is a little bit poor, and so I apologize in advance. But without further ado, I think you're going to enjoy this, my conversation with Mr. Jason Cannon. Jason Cannon, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Gavin. Thank you very much for inviting me. Looking forward to the chat.
Not at all, Jason. We have an international audience based all over the world. And so there's going to be some people that have heard of you, come across you in your LinkedIn page and things like that. But for the vast majority of our listeners, they won't know who are you and what do you do?
I'm what you'd call a serial estate agent, Gavin. So started at 17, ran a region for a big bank. At 26, at 31, started my first business, sold that. And then 2001 started another business in London, had a couple of offices, employed about 12 people, had a lettings book of about 350 properties.
Right. So as a lettings business, basically, a lettings agency.
Yes, sales, lettings, commercial, block management. We did the whole thing. We did the whole 360 of property. And in 2006, I did a qualification, an NLP qualification, qualified as a hypnotherapist. Always been interested in all things the mind. And then about 12 years ago, I got into professional coaching. So coaching, consultancy, training and mentoring. And that's what I currently do. So I support entrepreneurs, normally solo entrepreneurs, to start a business, scale a business with an exit plan. So I work with letting agents, sales agents, and other associated businesses, in and around the property world. So
somebody who would like to start a letting agency or a property agency, start from scratch, scale it up, and then build it in such a way as you aren't in it, but you're running it, and you can actually step away and sell it, and somebody will be delighted to pick up the market share that you have grown.
Yeah, I mean, we can do these things on our own, can't we? I reckon if I'd had a performance coach, or I'd had that accountability of a professional coach back in 2001, 2003, when we started, that would have accelerated that business for me. I would have made better decisions because I would have had a better sounding board, somebody that had been there and done it themselves. For want of a better word, a mentor. I've always been learning based, so it's not a case of I know best and I can't learn anything from you. I'm always, every day is a school day, isn't it? A bit of a cliche.
ABL, always be learning.
Always be learning. Yeah, love it. So I've tried to escape the property business many times, Gavin, but I always get drawn back into it.
It's just too interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, we all do it, even when we're not looking to buy. We're looking, aren't we?
We're looking at what's on the market and we're interested in where it's going and everything. Yeah, exactly. Let's just, if we jump in too soon, we lose some of the context, Jason. I think what would be useful is maybe take us back. Before we started recording, you mentioned that you started work very young, and it'd be great to get a little bit of your backstory. And just if you can tell us your early days in business, working right up to the point where you became a property person or a letting agent or whatever?
Yeah. I wasn't particularly academic at school. My father was a teacher, so he was naturally disappointed in my lack of education. He had a desire for me to go to university. I had a place potentially at Brighton University. Flunked my O levels as they were then. Dad sent me to college to continue that and then to do some A levels. After about 7 months of wheeling and dealing, buying and selling things, CDs, leather jackets. It wasn't CDs actually in those days. It was records.
Records, LPs, yeah.
Yeah, I had a little part-time job in Sainsbury's working in the bakery, and I used to do that. Get up early in the morning, cycle down there, do my work, and then I'd either go off to school or I'd go off to college. So I had a bit of money behind me that I'd saved up. I'd been working, doing sort of part-time jobs for myself since I was about 11 or 12, selling pet rabbits that I was breeding, doing cleaning jobs.
Entrepreneurial, just to say the least, yeah.
Yeah. And I loved one of the things that I loved was tennis. So I had to have the best tennis racket, but my father and mother didn't have the money for that. So if you want it, son, you got to go and earn the money yourself. If you want to go and play football with your mates on a weekend, that's fine, but you've got to sort out the lifts. I'm not doing that for you, my dad said. So very early on, it was, if you want it, you got my permission, go and do it for yourself. So that was a really good lesson, a good schooling for me, Gavin.
Roll up the sleeves, yeah.
Yeah, at 17 at college, I saw a job in the window of the local job centre, come and be an estate agent. I'd always, looked at property and with envy and thought, oh, I'd love to be involved in that someday. So just called them up and said, you've got this opportunity. It's with Bovis Homes, a 1-year apprenticeship. Got the job, loved it because I learned, about the new homes market, the second-hand market, construction, etc. And most weekends I was on a new home site somewhere selling some lovely properties, and realized actually I was quite good at talking to people. I was quite good at matching people to property. Went to see my boss after 10 months, smashed all the targets that I'd been given, and said, right, Keith, still remember his name, lovely guy, Keith Carter. I said, Keith, what should I do? I've smashed my targets. Where's my company car? Where's my pay rise? And he went, slow down, son, slow down. He said, actually, there isn't anything. So I said, okay, what should I do? He said, give this guy a call. And this guy was a guy who ran the most successful estate agency business in London and the South. Called him up, said, I understand you're the guy I need to talk to. He said, yeah, come and talk to me. 2 days later, I was working for him. 10,000 a year, £12.50 a sale. Big money.
Can you tell us who that was? Are they still in business?
They are still in business. They're a firm called Jackson Property Services, and they modelled themselves in a big way on the US sort of realtor market. Everyone had a uniform, name badges. We all answered the phone in a very sort of, interesting way. Training was fantastic. We used to work 5 days a week, and then Saturday mornings was training, and you'd give up your day off to go training. You didn't begrudge that because no one else was getting training. In those days, it was, there goes, son, there's a pen and paper, here's a phone, get on with it, call some people. But we had some proper training, and I absolutely loved that. Worked my way up there, opened offices, was a manager at 21, was a regional manager at 26, running quite a few offices. And then at 31, the Halifax had bought Jackson's, spent, I think, about £1 million in office, big money. Halifax then decided it wasn't the right place for them, and they were losing money and basically sold up. And at that time, I needed a change. I needed an opportunity. A couple of friends said, look, we're going to start a business. Want to do it with you? So I did that. Again, sales, lettings, business. Did that for 5 years. Sold up.
This was your own firm, so.
I was a partner in a firm. And then 2001, again, another person I'd met said, look, I'm going to go into business and I'd love to do it with you. Are you interested? I said, yeah, I'd love to. We talked about that. Within 7 months of incorporation, we were in profit. We were the market share agent within 24 months. And we slowly built that business up over 17, 18 years. And then in 2017, had an offer to buy it from somebody that I knew. And it was the right time for me. I'd been doing some coaching and some consultancy and some training. Wasn't really enjoying the day-to-day. Yeah, I wasn't really enjoying the day-to-day. And the opportunity to help more people with the coaching was what attracted me into that. So yeah, last 12 years I've been doing that. And yeah, that's what I absolutely love, Gavin.
Interesting. And tell us, I mean, in terms of the lessons that you learned, like what are the kind of key learnings from working with Jackson Property Services? That like was that really fundamental? The fact that they had the training on the weekends and things like that, that was the only firm in town that was doing that kind of thing. Did you
Yeah.
take those lessons into your new business with your other partners?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I always had the mentality of I'll understand my client, what the client wants, why they want it, and I'll then apply myself as best I can to get them that. I can remember now, one of the first properties I ever sold was in a southeast London suburb of London. Went to see the lady, and she had a couple of kids. One was about to start secondary school, and she was about 4 or 5 miles from getting into the school because of the catchment area. So she had to move. And she said to me, "It's been on the market for X number of months. Nothing seems to be working. And I've really got to get little Jimmy into the school because he's starting in September." So I said, "Okay, I will do everything I can to get the property sold." So consequently, any person that came into the office or called up and said, "We're looking for a 3-bedroom house. I've got this 2-bedroom in X, it's really nice. You could
Yeah,
probably extend it." So I was determined to help her get her sold. And we did. We got her moved, and she was just over the moon. He got into the school. And for her, that was the most important thing. Her focus was on, this is non-negotiable. I'm getting him into the school, because the other option for her, the school that he was offered, was absolutely terrible. So,
right.
as a mother, she
You want,
was going to do everything she
yeah.
could to get him into that school. So I still remember that. Probably embellished the story slightly, but
It's interesting
um,
you use the term non-negotiable. That's a term that I use a lot myself in terms of holding myself accountable and things like that. Clearly, as a performance coach and things like that, you're used to holding your clients accountable. I'd like to
yeah,
talk about that because I think that's helpful, and especially this market that we're in now. A lot of people, I hear people kind of saying, "Oh, the prices are." We're not sure if the prices are going to fall. Interest rates are high. The market is bad. Demand is low. There's all of this kind of negativity, and
yeah.
because of that, people are thinking. I think now's the time to stay out of the market. How do you feel about that, and what would your advice be to people that are thinking about that?
I think we spoke about this before, didn't we?
Yeah,
we're humans, we have a desire to have shelter, to own our own space and have our own property. So that's never going to change. And that's certainly not going to change because of the economy and the circumstances. So if we can make it work, we'll make it work. And in so many parts of the world now, regardless of what interest rates are and regardless of the average house prices, the rental market, it's just skyrocketed, hasn't it? Rental prices have gone up so much that
yeah,
actually, in many cases, it's still cheaper for you to go and get a mortgage at a higher interest rate than it is to pay rent, and to pay that for a year or 2 years and have no security of tenure. And if you can make it work, make it work. And I think it's surprising when, sometimes when you have that burden of a mortgage, that cost, it makes you more determined to go and find that money, doesn't it?
yeah,
Because you've got a
yeah, for
target, you've
sure.
got something, you've got to go and find it. Um, so one of the things that I talk about a lot is we've all got some pain somewhere. What motivates us to do something, unless you're very, very fortunate that you were born into a lot of money or you're wealthy. The vast majority of us, there is some pain. There is some pain somewhere and some consequence. So as a coach, what I will do is my goal is to get to know you better than you know yourself, and help you then self-discover where that pain is. So what is the motivation for you to better yourself, to improve yourself, to aspire to buy the bigger property or have a different lifestyle or spend time with your children? So one of the questions that I start with is, what's your definition of success? Some people, it is all about the money. Some people, it's all about time with their family. I was fortunate that for me, that was non-negotiable, because when I grew up, I didn't see a lot of my father because he was always away teaching. He ran a couple of busy schools. At the weekend, he was doing other things. He was doing timetables and marking work and seeing teachers and all the rest of it. So, he would drop me to football, and then I would get a lift back, or I would make my own way and wouldn't see him for, a few days. So for me, when it came to having kids, one of the things I said I'm going to feel like I'm a success is spending time with my kids growing up. And being able to meet them from school one day a week, take them to football on a Saturday or Sunday or whatever day it was, be involved in their life. So for me, success was spending time with the family, spending time with kids, time. We don't get it back, do we?
Yeah.
When you're 25, 30 and you're perhaps starting a business, your definition of success is generally money, isn't it?
Generally speaking, yeah, that's true.
Generally speaking. So it's finding the motivation. It's the same with the buyer, same with the seller. How motivated
What's
are
motivated?
you? Yeah. Is this move is it about the money, or is it about the move? What's most important to you, the money or the move?
Yeah.
Sometimes you've got to ask that question and highlight that with a client. So find the pain, and you'll find the motivation, and then help them discover the solution.
That's an interesting one, yeah. And I think earlier we were talking about, buying a property here, and obviously it doesn't have to be exclusively for your own personal use. You can house hack nowadays, where you buy something that's larger than you need, and you can obviously rent out the upper floors or the lower floors or whatever, and keep something for yourself. And there's a way to do that. But you mentioned an interesting figure, that the fixer upper at 10% below market, and a refurbished property is usually valued 20%. So there's a 30% margin there. And that's the one that people should be focused on, is that 30%.
Absolutely. Yeah. My experience with most agents, Gavin, is that they are not very good at they're very good at missing opportunity. Very good at missing opportunity.
And why is that?
It's generally a lack of experience, life experience.
Right.
I think in the UK, the average age of an estate agent is 23.
The average age.
And that 23-year-old estate agent hasn't bought a property themselves.
So they're trying to sell something they don't own themselves.
Yeah, and they've never been through the experience. They don't have. How can they be empathetic with a vendor and a purchaser? And more importantly, how can they spot an opportunity? That development plot, that land on the side, that land at the back, that airspace development, or all the kind of things that you and I would spot and notice. The vast majority of agents miss those things. They miss those things. So it's an education thing, isn't it?
There's something I want to ask you. When it comes to that, there's been people asking me a question recently about, they were going in to buy a property, and they were saying, Gavin, what questions should I ask the agent? And I'm thinking, as a serial estate agent, you're probably the best man to ask that. Like, in terms of, if you were advising somebody going in to look at a property, like, what are the key questions that you think? You said earlier, before we started recording, that ask better questions. And I'd love to know what you think. What are the best questions to ask before you buy something?
Well, it depends who I'm working for here, Gavin, doesn't it? Because typically I'm working for the seller. So one of the questions I'm going to ask the seller is, when you purchased this property, what did you use to negotiate the price down? And they'll generally give me something, and then I'll say, okay, sounds like a strange question to ask, but the reason I ask is because then we can plan how we deal with that.
Objection handling.
Objection handling. So key questions for a purchaser are going to start with their motivation and their model that they're using to buy a property. Are they basing it on a yield? Are they basing it on a growth potential based on the area? Yeah, exactly. Value add. So different investors use different models, and I've come up with all of them. The guys and girls that turn up with a calculator, and based on what you're asking for this, I'm going to take X off, and it's worth Y. So it differs depending on who you're talking to and who you're working for. I don't know if I've really answered that question
I
Clearly,
was just curious if anything like stood out, because eh, like I've been struggling with the question myself because I've been thinking to myself like, is this something I could create like a checklist for? But it's so nuanced when you're looking at a property because of all the reasons that you've outlined that you kind
yeah.
of think to yourself, this is something that you'd end up with an encyclopedia type, you know, choose your questions from the following 25 pages. So yeah,
I, so,
probably an unfair question to ask.
yeah, I'd probably flip it, and actually, I'd probably, if I was interviewing an agent that was going to sell this investment property for me, or rent it and manage it for me, those are the questions I think would be easier to formulate,
Yeah.
because I want an agent that A, I can trust, and B, has got a track record of exceeding expectation in terms of value. And how do they do that? What's their marketing like? Are they just a stick a board up and put it on the internet? Or are they doing some proactive marketing? You know, what circle of influence do they have in terms of creating competition for that property? So I'd probably, getting a list of questions for agents is an easier. So I could do that. What criteria questions for the seller when it comes to, I'm an investor and I own this property and I'm thinking about selling it. Here's my questions I'm going to ask my agent before I employ that agent. How
Yeah.
do you create competition? What's your strategy for ensuring we get the best price? What's your strategy for ensuring the deal goes through quickly? How do you qualify buyers? How do you negotiate with my money? It's a hot topic, isn't it? Negotiation at the moment.
At the moment
Um,
in particular, yeah, with the market the way it is. Yeah, just the
you know,
mindset at the moment. I think people feel a sense of scarcity
mhm.
because of the rates and the fact that that nice rental margin that they were enjoying a year ago is suddenly gone now on interest rate hikes. And so there's a sense of scarcity there, and possibly the thing is no longer cash flowing positively for them. And so
Yeah,
that puts that scarcity mindset puts you at a distinct disadvantage in terms of your clarity of thought. And it'd be interesting, given your coaching kind of background, in terms of trying to move away from that scarcity mindset and to try to kind of get your thinking on a clear and level playing field.
yeah. I think if you looked at land registry data in the UK, you can clearly see how prices have moved up, and you can monitor that. So you can say to somebody, well, if you'd waited here, your mate down the pub is saying to you, wait, Gavin, wait a couple of years. Well, if we did this back in 2008, let's look at the prices in 2012 when the market was absolutely crazy busy, when
Yeah,
people were bidding up offers left, right, and centre. How would you have felt then if you'd waited 2 years or 3 years? A, you'd have paid more for it, and B, you'd have missed out on this opportunity to leverage that two or three or one or two properties. So let's look at historic data to actually let's present the evidence to you. So it is, it's real evidence, isn't it? It's not
yeah,
opinion. And I'd also say that, the days of just having a traditional job that you're going to be working in for 30, 40 years, paying into a pension, it's unlikely you're going to have one of those jobs in your career. So how else are you generating income? Putting money into a pension is probably not going to give you much of a return, and they're certainly not performing particularly well at the moment. But one thing's for certain, we have a shortage of property, don't we?
yeah.
We
There's
we
a
have a
shortage
burgeoning
of housing. Yeah,
yeah, we have a burgeoning population. That's not going to change, and we have a shortage of property. So if you are, if I play Monopoly with you, I'm whatever I land and I'm buying.
yeah, yeah. It's a good point. Yeah, that's how you win the
Uh,
game. Yeah.
that's how you win the game. And then you're going to have those peaks and troughs, aren't you? You're going to have difficult times, but
The
no
key
risk.
is, I was just going to say the key is to leave you have a sufficient of a margin between your expenses and your outgoings that you can weather that storm, because
Yeah,
that's the big thing. Is it's the cash flow is the killer. If you don't have cash, you're forced to sell. Whereas nobody really cares if you bought it for 200 and it falls in value to 175 for 3 years, but then it bounces back to 200 and then continues on to 225 or 300 or whatever. I mean, those dips don't really matter as long as it was cash flowing throughout the entire period.
Yeah. No different to stocks and shares, is it really, I suppose? Yeah, I think, I've got a small portfolio of properties that I have owned and purchased over the last 20 years. It now provides a reasonably stable income for me. It was the best thing I ever did. And
Yeah.
I didn't buy my first one till I was 31. No, sorry, 36. So it
Wow. Okay.
wasn't like I started early.
It's good for people to hear that, because I hear a lot of I do a bit of coaching as well, and I hear the guys that are in their 20s, like early mid 20s, and a lot of them are feeling this sense of urgency to get on the ladder as fast as possible because they don't want to miss the opportunity.
Yeah.
But the worst thing you can do is buy badly. Is like, I mean, definitely my advice at the moment, even in this weak market that we're in, like, supply is low, demand is high, but the affordability is the question. And
Yes.
I think the big thing is you don't stop looking, you continue to look, but you're looking for a good deal. And you're
Yeah.
never going to find a good deal waiting for the market, to get to a certain place. You have to be continually on the lookout, because even if the market is still, maybe it has another year to fall, in a kind of average sense, but
Yeah.
you could have the best opportunity of your life offered up in front of you in 3 weeks' time. And
Yeah.
you're not at the bottom, you're not at the trough yet, but
No.
you still just happen to be in the right place at the right time, looking correctly.
Yeah. And realistically, what would you rather? Would you rather buy in a rising market or a falling market? For me, I'd rather buy in a falling market, because then the bounce back is going to be even bigger, isn't it? And my opportunity to find that seller it's about the move and not about the money, and
Yeah,
leverage my position so that I can get a bargain, get a deal, because they're not selling it because they have to get X, they're selling it because they need to move to Y.
yeah,
So
yeah.
uh,
The motivation is different when in a falling market, people who are selling, there's an urgency to sell,
yeah,
because they feel like that if they don't get the 200 today, they'll be accepting 180 in a 6 months time. So there's an urgency there. Whereas in a rising market, people who are selling, you don't meet the 200. There's like, I'll just wait, because it's a rising market. I'll probably get 210 from somebody if I hold on.
yeah. And then the one they're buying, the 250 they're buying, is then 260 or 270. So it's all relative, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the education piece as an agent or an investor. I did some coaching with a lady who owned a property with an ex-partner, and she was basically faffing around over about £10,000. She was going through so much stress trying to negotiate with him. He wasn't budging. She put her life on hold for about a year, and then a
God,
load
for
of
10,
stress. And I said to her, and remind me
10
how
grand.
much you're doing this for? Yeah, yeah. And then she sent me a nice message a couple of days later, just to say, do you know what? I realized that life's more important. And, the hassle and the aggravation I've been through, I've just now moved on. It wasn't a make or break situation. And yeah, the money would have been nice, but she'd
Of
probably still
course,
be arguing a year later. So
people get entrenched when there's a marital split or any of that kind of stuff. And it can be very difficult to give an inch, because usually there's a lot more baggage there as well. There's not just simply that you've split, but maybe there's infidelity or some sort of betrayal viewed in the background. And so that feeds into the emotion. And you're kind of
yeah,
thinking, I'm not giving an inch here because I've done nothing wrong. And this, yeah, it can be one of the things that I talk about in my own sort of coaching stuff is that there's 4 E's that can really detrimentally impact your career as an investor, and two of them are entirely under your own control, and that is your ego and your emotions. And
yeah,
there's nothing like, nobody is pulling the trigger other than you. You're the one who's getting worked up over something. You're the one who's getting entrenched. You're the person who's all you have to do is let go of that and have kind of clarity of what you're trying to achieve. And that's the other two E's are the ones that are outside of your control and that you're a passenger. And that is the economy, and then events that can take place that are completely outside of your control, whether that's the COVID pandemic or whether that's the airplanes that crashed into the World Trade Center in 9/11, or whether
Yeah,
that's something happening in your own life, like a divorce or like a death in the family or something like that. Events,
yeah,
like nobody gives you a timetable saying this is when that event is going to take place and it's going to create all sorts of havoc for you.
yeah. I remember going into lockdown and with my buy-to-let portfolio and saying to my wife, we didn't have any rent warranties at the time. I think we had one, maybe one or two. And I said to my wife, we're gonna get these rent warranties now, because who knows what's going to happen? Who knows? All
Yeah,
of these tenants could be out of work in a year's time or 6 months' time. Fortunately, didn't have to use any of them, but that insurance just meant that we could sleep at night because we didn't have
yeah,
that worry. It's no different to if you're in business and you're running a successful business. It's have some proper life cover so that
yeah,
if
yeah.
you're not around, it sounds obvious, doesn't it?
Life cover and serious illness cover as well,
Yeah,
because
critical
I
illness.
know, yeah, critical illness. Like, I mean, the worst thing that can happen to you, is obviously that you're hit by a bus or something like that. But outside of that, going into hospital for surgery and being out of work
Yeah,
for 3 months or something like that, like how do you get by through that period of time if you're working for yourself or something like that?
yeah, it's massively overlooked, isn't it,
It
by
is, and
so
a
many
lot of people
people? We
balk
think we're
at
in.
the idea. Tell me this,
Yeah,
Jason.
yeah, it's never.
You coach estate agents, and help them build up their business. The world has changed quite a lot in the agency business these days. You've got artificial intelligence coming on stream. You've got social
Yeah,
media. You've got. Can you just give us some of the top kind of areas that you need to pay attention to? Has that changed in the last number of years from how you might have coached people 10 years ago?
yeah. I think it's definitely changed in terms of the opportunity to beat your transactional agents. The vast majority of agents are transactional. They're not interested in a relationship, and we're also caught between the listing models and the sales models. So many businesses are great at listing houses, but they're not great at moving their customers.
Yeah,
Some of the statistics are frighteningly bad. London agents, I can give you an example. London agents that are listing agents will move about 4.5 out of 10 of their customers. And if you're working with an agent that's more hands-on and deals with a smaller number of stock and is very relational, they're moving about 6.5 of their customers, 6.5 out of 10.
20% more.
So we've seen it. We are seeing a massive shift from transactional to relational. We're lagging behind the rest of the world when it comes to how good we are as real estate agents, how professional we are, how process driven we are, and we're getting better at that. The money and the fees are still shockingly low in the vast
Yeah,
majority of businesses.
like
Um,
that's something that really stands out for me, because I know that UK and Ireland are very similar in terms of our fee structures, and 1% to 1.5% is the kind of sales price. I sold an apartment in New York City a few years ago, and I was absolutely staggered that I had to pay the agent 6.7% sales
yeah,
commission. And I was like, huh? How much? Like, and
yeah,
they kind of said, this is the standard rate. Like, this is not us like screwing you over. Like, this is what everyone
yeah,
pays. And then on top
yeah.
of that, there was some other, state, tax that you have to do and all this kind of stuff. I was shocked. But then I thought, that's probably one of the reasons why it is so transactional, is because the fees are so small and so slim that you really have to take that kind of shotgun scatter approach and try to get, cover the,
Yeah, Yeah, I think the other part of it, Gavin, is that on average, most estate agents only stay in the job for about 2 years and then they move on. So if you're working in one town for 2 years, what is the incentive to build relationships with the local people, with local trades and
Yeah.
businesses that are going to refer and recommend? You're not going to have that repeat
Yeah.
business, are you?
Yeah.
Whereas if
That's an
you are,
interesting stat.
yeah, whereas if you're the great agent in, in a suburb of Dublin or the suburb of London, and you're going to be there for longevity, you can afford to do some of the important things that are going to help you build your business for the future. You're not thinking, well, I've got one eye on the door anyway, Gavin, I'm out in 2 years.
Yeah.
I'll go and do something else, or I'll go to another firm. So we're seeing this shift to the self-employed brokerages. We're seeing the shift to more niche agents, more niche businesses that cater for a smaller patch, really hyper focused on a smaller area and building the relationship. The Americans do it well, the South Africans do it well, the Australians do it well. We're seeing a shift in Northern and Southern Europe with regard to that as well. As you say, the UK and Ireland, I think we're lagging behind somewhat, but a change is definitely happening for the better.
It's
And I've always been very client focused, and I think that's always stood me in good stead. And having had a quite a successful lettings business, that is less transactional than a sales business, isn't it? Because you tend to work with those landlords for longer. You really get to know them. And even if you just have a conversation once a year, Gavin, what are your plans in 2024? Are you reinvesting? Are you selling? What's the goal? What are you up to? You wouldn't be having that conversation with your sales clients. One of the things I say to agents is you've got to do a real simple lead generation tactic is have anniversary valuations with your past customers. So if you bought through me last year, I'm going to offer you a market appraisal next year. Come and see what you've done. Ask you some questions. Who's selling next in your road, Gavin? Who of your friends and family need the help of a great agent? Simple, isn't it?
Yeah, very simple.
But we don't do that. We go next. I said this to I was doing some coaching with it wasn't a real estate business, but it was an entrepreneur, and I said to him, "You already know all the people you need to know." That little sentence, when I saw him the following week, and I said, "Right, let's review where we are and what you did last week." And he said, "Can I just stop you there?" He said, "Something that you said to me last week really resonated with me." And he said, I took it home and I then said it back to myself and I realized, shit, I don't need to chase new people. I just need to ring the people that already know me, like me, and trust me. And he said,
Yeah.
"It's so simple." And I said, yes, Tom, I love it. But we don't, do
It's
we?
a very good point. Yeah. It's like it's so much easier to work with an existing client than to recruit a new client.
I know you, I trust you, and so why do I need to go and find somebody else? So one of the simplest things to teach any business owner is how to ask for referrals and recommendations in very, very simple language. What advice would you give me, Gavin? What advice would you give a small business owner to find more business? Now, the fact that I've asked you that means I value your opinion. You're going to go away and think about that. You're perhaps going to, you're going to like the fact that I've asked you and I trust you enough to ask you. And you will go away and think about that. And at some point in the future, you could be, in the pub with your buddies, or you could be watching rugby or whatever. And someone's going to say, "Gavin, what do you think? I'm thinking about selling this." And you're going to say, I know who you need to speak to.
Yeah. So planting the seed. Yeah.
Sow the seed. Yeah. A coach said to me a few years ago, and I'm showing my age now. He said, I called it my Columbo question. He said, "It's one more thing." Yeah, before you go.
One more thing. Yeah. Peter Falk. Yeah.
Yeah. McDonald's added about 20 million to their bottom line just by asking one more question.
Yeah. Would you like
to
supersize?
Do you want first one, do you want fries with that?
Yeah.
And then do you want large? And in business, it's no different. If you already know me, like me, and trust me, why shouldn't I ask that question? Yeah, add a little bit of humor to that and talk about McDonald's, and people remember it.
That is good. Yeah.
It's like it's a simple business. It's a people business. And what agents don't do enough of now and investors don't do enough of now is just picking the phone up. You know, we rely too much on digital messages, WhatsApps, emails. Just pick the phone up. Pick the phone up and say, hi, what are you up to? How can I help? You know, help them before you ask for something. And, you know, one of the things that I say to my guys and girls is you be hyper-focused on your niche market and don't have that, you know, you used the word scattergun earlier, which is exactly right. You know, we're distracted by shiny objects, a property here, a property there. Decide on your, you know, if you and I were running a restaurant, we'd decide on our target audience, wouldn't we? We'd decide on our menu, we'd keep it simple, we'd decide on our pricing, and we'd say, right, who's our ideal customer? What do they look like? We'd write it out, wouldn't we? They're going to be this age, this age, they're going to come. That's our target, and we'd be really focused on that.
It's so true.
And it should be no different with real estate. You know, pick your market. There's a big enough, you know, find the market in the market. And as an investor, go and build your network of agents, educate those agents, help them find you opportunities, because my observation would be that most of them are not very good at that and they miss a lot of opportunities. So build your network, build it local to where you want to be successful, help them, and then in turn they're going to help you. Pick the phone up and have those conversations. We are in that age now of collaboration more, aren't we?
For sure.
When I first started, we used to joke about this all the time, Gavin. If we ever had a property that was on a multi-agency with two agents, the things that agents would do to ensure that you couldn't get into that property, or no, it's sold that one. I just rang the office, Gavin. Didn't they tell you?
Yeah. Protecting their. It's funny. It's that's again the scarcity mindset, rather than having an abundance mindset.
Yeah, the best agents I work with now have got international. They've got national and international connections. So if they get asked a question, if they're working as a buyer's agent for an investor or a buyer, and they say we want to buy in Dublin or we want to buy in Portugal or wherever, they've got a network of people. They've got someone they can ring and say, hi, John, hi, Gavin, you know, can you help this client for me? There's a lot more of that goes on. And that's a good thing, isn't it?
For sure. Jason, I'm conscious of time. What I wanted to do is I have a couple of questions that I like to ask my guests. The first one is the best advice that you've received in your career.
One of my mentors was a Kiwi guy called Dennis Quinn, no longer with us, sadly. And he was absolutely brilliant at slowing everything down. He slowed everything down. So if he was talking to a client and it was an important point he wanted to get across, he would do that thing. He would just sort of push everything out of the way on a desk if you were sat opposite him. And he would then, you'd go, oh, what's going on now? Dennis is going to say something profound. And it wasn't necessarily always profound, but what he did was you would then pay attention because there was no noise. And he would then deliver what he wanted to deliver. You know, he would say things like, you know, a client would question his fee and he would then just stop dead and he would say, well, that's exactly why you need to work with me, Gavin. So he would
slow everything down.
He would slow everything down. And because what happens is, particularly in negotiation, or when somebody puts up a barrier towards not using you or not doing something that you would like them to do, we speed up, don't we?
Yeah.
You've not listened. You don't understand. We go to that place of fight or flight, and we go at 100 miles an hour. And what he did was he'd take 2 or 3 breaths, and he would then look at you, you know, dead in the eye, and he would say, "My fee is not up for negotiation, Gavin." And then he would just wait, and you'd go, okay, then. Yeah, no problem.
I accept. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Slowing down to speed up, I think. And, you know, and what he was very good at, listening and writing things down. This is what you said. This is what I heard you say. And he'd then play it back to you. to confirm A, he'd listened, and B, he understood.
Yeah, I think that's a really strong point. I've done that before, and it works really well because I think a lot of the time when it comes to negotiation, the person that you're dealing with primarily want to know that their motivation is understood and that you've heard their needs, and that you're not just there like, okay, we'll sell this property for no. I want to know that you understand my motivations here. And so just pausing things, slowing it down, and repeating back and say, just so we're clear, this is how I've taken it. These are the driving sort of points that are driving you or whatever. Good advice.
We have so much distraction in our world, don't we? We have, notifications on our phone. We have digital messages, and we rarely have time to slow it down and to think about what it is we really want. This is what I've heard you say. We talked about a solution, and you agreed at the time that was a good solution, yeah? And he was very good at nodding at people, and then they would nod back to him. Right. I don't think he realized how good he was, Gavin. That was the truth.
Unfortunate. Yeah. Unfortunately. And you say he's not with us anymore.
He's not, sadly. No, he's not. He used to, on a regular basis, he would take me across the road. There's a pub across the road, and he'd say, come on, let's go for a half. And it was because he wanted to teach me something, show me something. So I'm really fortunate that I had him in my life as a mentor. 18, 19-year-old. Yeah.
Okay.
So slow it down, listen, and perhaps if you are that, 18, 19-year-old Jason or Gavin, get yourself a mentor.
Go for sure. The other question I had for you, Jason, is so I'm not going to ask your age now, but you've been in business for a long time. If you had an opportunity to turn back the clock and speak to 18 or 19-year-old Jason, what advice would you give yourself?
It's a really good question. I'm not sure I would have listened at 18 or 19. Not knowingly listened. I'd probably say read more. And I've realized in later life that I've got a thirst for knowledge. Learning things is what fuels me. Yeah, I always lead with curiosity. I love the word. So I would definitely say to my younger self, read more, be more open, be less judgmental, be less biased, because our bias gets in the way, doesn't it? So much of the time, even if we don't realize it or accept it, it does get in the way. And be more open to the possibility that you're not right. Confidence is a good thing, but there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. I even remember as a 20-year-old, my mum saying to me, "You're not too big, for me to give you a slap."
Yeah. And it's funny you say that. It reminds me of a couple of years ago. I created a podcast, and I referenced the difference between property and cryptocurrency. And I just sort of said that, in my view, cryptocurrency is overvalued, and that there's going to be a crash because it doesn't have this inherent value. There's no kind of underlying value to the asset. It's really just people paying more than the person who bought it before them. And I said, if you actually go down below that, there's not a huge amount to support it. And this created quite a bit of controversy, and a couple of guys wrote back saying, "Gavin, you don't know what you're talking about. Crypto, we can't compare the two, blah, blah, blah." Of course, fast forward 2 years and those guys probably lost their shirts. Of course, Bitcoin is bouncing back now, and people will kind of use that but an awful lot of people put money into these different coins out there that have completely gone under, and there's nothing to show for it now. So it's like people who say it's different this time tend to find out that no, it's not. That the voice of reason.
Yeah, it's interesting how we've come full circle, haven't we? Because we come back to bricks and mortar. You've got something you can touch. You've got something that has some intrinsic value. Whereas your crypto or your stocks and shares, they don't have that same. You can't feel it and touch it.
The tangibility
So
of
me,
it is attractive. Yeah, I think people like the tangibility. That, like, worst case scenario, you can move into the place. You know what I mean. It
yeah,
gives you some alternative use case rather than just, sorry, you've lost your money.
yeah, and I sold hundreds and hundreds, thousands of 2-bedroom flats, apartments, houses, and that was always to your first time buyer who's worried. Well, I'm worried about my mortgage being this X. Well, you can always rent out that second room.
Yeah. Always look on the bright side.
And that's reality, isn't it? The amount of investors that bought 1-bedroom flats and turned them into bought studio flats, turned them into 1-beds, and bought 1-beds and turned them into 2-beds. For that exact reason, just gives them the confidence that they've got that if they need it.
Yeah, Airbnb. Jason, thanks so much for your time today. If people wanted to learn more about you and your various teachings and stuff, what's the best place to find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can find me on Instagram. I don't have a massive following on Instagram, but it's Jason MJ Cannon
I'll put
on
some
Instagram.
links in the show notes.
But yeah, thank you very much, Gavin. Oh yeah, LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I've got a reasonably big audience there, and it's all educational stuff. It's all sharing stuff. And yeah, if anyone's interested, reach out. I always love to help.
Well, Jason, wishing you the best of luck with everything, and you and I should stay in touch because it sounds like we mentor some similar people and groups.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Facade. If you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover in future episodes, please connect with me via the Facebook group that is called Behind the Facade Community. Alternatively, you will find me on social media. My handle is Gavin J. Gallagher. You can stay up to date with all of my content and the various projects I'm working on over on my website, gavinjgallagher.com. And while you're there, please do add your name to the Join My Tribe thing over on the right-hand side. This will ensure you're kept up to date via my weekly newsletter. All of these links are in the show notes below. That's all for now. I will see you guys in the next episode.